Hello everyone. So in the last video we have discussed about the concept of using a component in a React application. So what is a component? It is kind of a JavaScript function. So if we follow the example that we did in the last video, this app.js was a component that was imported by this index.js file. See, import app from app.js, and so this component was used here to render the content, and this content was rendered inside the DOM element, which is root. So if you have followed my earlier video, you will be able to know what I'm trying to say here. So in this video I'll be explaining you about a scenario. Let's assume your project is growing in size. You have multiple components and you have hundreds of components in your project, right? So if we follow the file structure, where do we put the components? We put the components inside the source folder, right? So if your project is growing and you have hundreds of, let's say, hundreds of components, so this source folder will have hundreds of components listed here, right? So in a way it becomes messy. So what we do is, let me explain it with the help of a diagram. Look here. So everything is shown in the HTML page. Whatever data that we have in our components will be thrown ultimately to this index.html page, which is inside the public folder. So how these steps come into scene is that you have your JSX written inside a component file, which is app.js, which is inside a source folder. Now this app.js, which is a component, it will pass the data to index.js, right? Okay, so this index.js is inside the source folder. Now this index.js will pass the data to index.html file, which will be seen on the web browser. Okay, now in this scenario, in which in the scenario where your application is growing and you have multiple components, here what I'm trying to say is you can create a folder separately. Okay, you can create a folder separately inside the source folder. You can create a separate folder named subcomponents, or let's say components, and you place all the component files in this separate folder. You manage all the component files in this separate folder. So okay, that way it becomes manageable. Okay, and you keep this app.js as a, you can say, as a parent component file, which will be inside the source folder. And how it will operate is, these subcomponents, there may be hundred of subcomponent files here. So these subcomponent files will talk to this parent component file. Now in return, this parent component file will talk to the index.js file. This index.js file will talk to this index.html file, and the user will see this index.html file on the web browser, right? So if you picturize this image in your brain, it will be easier for you to understand. So let us go by the example and show you with practical example. Let's say, yeah, so in the last class this was the component that we used. Now what I'll do is I'll create a sub component inside the source folder. I'll create a separate folder, let's say components, and inside components I'll create some files. Let's say let's say subcomponent, let's keep it caps, subcomponent.js. okay, so now since this is a component file, and we can have multiple files here. Let's say another component file, let's say subcomponent.js, subcomponent2.js, let's say. Okay, so there are two component files here, and there can be hundreds of files, and all these will be component files. For this example, let's delete this subcomponent2, and let us only keep one file as of now. So here we will write a function, and we will have the function name, and we will return some value. Okay, so yeah, so what we can return is we will return some JSX. Let's say I am inside a subcomponent. Okay, it will return some JSX because it is a component, and I'll export this file as default, like we had done in our earlier video. Okay, it's not subcomponents, it's subcomponent. Okay, so I'll save this, and what I'll do is, since I've exported this file, now app.js, which is the parent component, I'll import the subcomponent file inside app.js, which is the parent component file. Look, so I've imported the subcomponent from this path, right? Now we can use the subcomponent as a component inside this file, right? Subcomponent, and let us close the tag. So what happens is, now if we take a look at the output, it will give us I am inside a component, because it gives this output. This particular output is given from this particular line, which is coming from the app.js itself. But this particular output is coming from the subcomponent that was created inside of this component folder. See? Okay, so this diagram speaks about everything that I have explained in this example. So that way you can manage your code easily. So in this folder you can have tens and hundreds of files, which will be component only. Okay, and all the rest other files you can place it inside the source path. Okay, now inside this components folder you can have subfolders also, like for, let's say, for headers and footers, you are maintaining some separate folders, headers, and inside that folder you are keeping your header component files and all, right? So that way you can manage your code easily. Okay, so this is a good approach to be followed, and this will help you to write clean code and write and keep the file structure in a better way. So this is all about it, and if you have any query regarding this video, or if you want to ask me anything, and if you want to request any video that I have to make for you, you can comment it in the comment section below. So thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next video.